The last thing that we need to learn how to name is called an acid. So first of all, an acid is an aqueous solution, which just means that it's in water, of a hydrogen compound. So the way that you know that something is an acid is that you'll see that it starts with an H. So the formula that you see, the first letter in the formula will be an H. Once you decide it's an acid, you need to decide if it's binary, meaning only two elements, or if it's ternary, because you name them differently. So binary means you only have two elements, and one of them has to be hydrogen, which means you'll just have one other element next to the hydrogen. You may have subscripts, so like if you had a 2 or 3 or something on the H or the Br, that's okay, it's still binary, as long as you just have hydrogen and one other element. So to name these, it's pretty easy. You're just going to use what's in quotations here. You're going to say hydroblankic acid, and you fill in the blank with whatever element is next to hydrogen. So in that example that I have there, HBr, I know it's an acid because it starts with H. I see that it's just H and one other element, so I know it's binary. So all I'm going to do is say hydrobromic acid. So I filled in the blank with bromine because that's the other element with hydrogen. So here's some examples. Again, we know that it's an acid because all of them start with H. And all you're going to do is do hydro and then fill in the blank. So the first one is hydrochloric acid. For the second one, again, we know it's an acid because it starts with H, and I see that it's just hydrogen and bromine, so I'm going to say hydrobromic acid. And the last one, even though there's a 2 on that, it still doesn't change the fact that it's binary because it's just hydrogen and sulfur. So you're going to say hydrosulfuric acid. When you go backwards with these, you do have to cross charges just like you did for ionic. So I see that it says hydroiodic acid if it's what's in quotations. So I'm going to start with H. I'm going to put it next to whatever's in the middle of the word. So iodic tells me that it's with iodine. And then don't forget to cross your charges. So hydrogen is +1, iodine is -1, so it's just a 1-to-1 ratio. For the next one, you have hydrogen first because it's an acid. You're going to bond it with fluorine because that's in the middle of the word. And again, hydrogen is +1, fluorine is -1, so those two cancel out as well. And for the last one, start with hydrogen. This time you're going to bond it with phosphorus, which is a -3 charge. So when you cross that down, notice that it becomes H3P. If the acid is ternary, it's going to be a little bit different though. So for a ternary acid, it's going to be hydrogen and then a polyatomic ion. And one way you can tell that it's ternary is that it will end in oxygen. So it'll have hydrogen, some element, and then oxygen. For these acids, they're still going to start with H in the formula, but you do not start the word with hydro. It's really tempting to say hydro because you see that hydrogen there. Make sure you only do that if it's hydrogen and one other element, not if there's 3. So in this case, you would not do that. Watch for that oxygen. If it has oxygen, you don't do that. All you have to do for ternary is to change the ending of the polyatomic ion. So if the polyatomic ion's name ends in 8, such as sulfate, nitrate, carbonate, all you're going to do is change the ending to ic. So for example, this one up here, NO3 is nitrate, so I'm going to change it to ic and make it nitric acid. Notice I didn't say hydronitric. Don't put a hydro in front of it just because it starts with H. The only time you use hydro is if it's just hydrogen and one other element. One way you can remember these two is if you say the sentence, I ate it and it made me sick, that'll force your brain to put those two sounds together. So you have ate and ick together. If the polyatomic ion's name ends in ite, like sulfite or nitrite, you're going to change it to OUS and you pronounce it us. And you can say the sentence, chemistry unites us, and that'll put ite with us in your head. So let's try a few of those. If you're going backwards, so first you do the symbols and cross your charges. So I see that it's an acid, so I'm going to start it with H. I see that there is no hydro in the front of the word. That tells me it's not just H and one other element, it's H and a polyatomic ion. And the way I know which one to use is to look at the ending right here. So I see that this is ic, which means that I'm going to put hydrogen with phosphate. And phosphate is PO4, but it does have a -3 charge, so you have to cross that charge down. Hydrogen is +1, so you'll never cross anything down over here because it's just going to be a 1, but you do need to cross that 3 down. For the next one, I see it's an acid, so I'm going to start it with H. There's no hydro, so I know it's a polyatomic ion, and the ending tells me which one. So the OUS tells me that it's with sulfite, because ite goes with us. Sulfite is SO3, but it has a -2 charge, so cross that down to the hydrogen. And for the last one, it's an acid, so start it with H. There's no hydro, so I know it's a polyatomic ion. The ending ic tells me it's with sulfate. So sulfate is SO4, but it has a -2 charge, so cross that down to the hydrogen. If we're going backwards, so first of all, I notice it's an acid because it starts with H. I see that it has the oxygen in it, so I'm not going to say hydro. What I need to do is decide the name of this polyatomic ion and just change the ending. CO3 is carbonate, so it becomes carbonic acid. You actually say it carbonic acid. Notice again, there's no hydro in front of that word, even though it starts with hydrogen. Do not use hydro unless it's binary. For the next one, it's an acid because it starts with H. It's got the O, so I know I'm just going to change the ending of this polyatomic ion. And NO2 is nitrite. Ite goes with us, so it becomes nitrous acid. And for the last one, NO3 is nitrate, so it becomes nitric acid. Again, no hydro for any of these because they all have oxygen. That's your clue that you're not going to use hydro. The state of North Carolina in the curriculum says that you need to be familiar with these 4. You don't necessarily need to memorize them if you understand what I just taught you. So I taught you how to name acids so you can name any acids at all. These are the 4 that if you're tested on your final exam, these are the 4 that the state could possibly test you on. So if you want to just memorize these 4 for your final exam, those are the only ones you'll be responsible for. However, like I said, you don't really need to memorize them as long as you know the rules for naming. And there's a worksheet number 8 that you can try if you want some practice with acids. And that is it for this unit.